Welcome back to Firepower. Today, we're diving into a rifle that lives in the strange space between myth and reality, praise and controversy, nostalgia and forgotten history. The Ruger Mini-14 is a firearm almost everyone has heard of, yet very few people truly understand. Behind its cowboy aesthetic and old-school wooden stock charm lies a story Ruger never pushed in their marketing. A story filled with engineering quirks, hidden variants, military deployments, and a darker legacy Ruger would rather leave buried. And once you hear the whole picture, you may never look at the Mini-14 the same way again. So buckle up. This isn't a simple review. This is a journey into one of America's most misunderstood rifles, how it was born, how it changed, how it was used, and why it refuses to die even in the age of the AR-15. Let's start with a misconception nearly everyone has. The Mini-14 was never meant to be a miniature M14. That comparison has been around for decades. And it's not entirely wrong, but it's also not the truth Ruger was designing toward. When Jim Sullivan, the same engineer who helped create the AR-15, teamed up with Bill Ruger in the 1960s, they weren't trying to build a military rifle. They wanted something for civilian shooters, a carbine that felt classic, ran reliably, and didn't look like a battlefield weapon. It needed to be friendly, familiar, and practical. By the time it hit shelves in 1973, the Mini-14 carried pieces of Garand and M14 DNA, but not their mission. It used a short-stroke gas piston system, a self-cleaning arrangement that was more forgiving than the direct impingement design of the AR. The rotating bolt and op rod layout gave the Mini a smooth, distinctive recoil impulse. But early rifles also came with quirks, thin pencil barrels that lost accuracy as they heated up, a bolt hold open that required a finger to release manually, and occasional heat-related wandering of the point of impact. Still, people loved it. Farmers threw it behind truck seats. Deputies kept it in patrol cars. Correctional officers perched with it in watchtowers. It was rugged, uncomplicated, and always ready to fire. Ruger quietly improved the platform through the years: heavier barrels, better sights, improved heat shields, and factory scope mounts. But Ruger never said, "We fixed the problems." They simply let the rifle's reputation speak louder than any sales brochure. And that is where the Mini-14's mystique begins. To understand why this rifle stands apart, you have to open it up. Mechanically, the Mini-14 blends old-world engineering with modern production in a way few rifles do. Its short-stroke piston is self-cleaning. Its operating rod runs inside the stock rather than above the barrel, and its recoil spring assembly sits beneath the bolt carrier. That's why the Mini-14 lacks a buffer tube and retains a classic rifle silhouette. It cycles smoothly, pushes straight back, and keeps gas and carbon out of your face. Ruger used a monolithic investment cast receiver, which reduced production costs without compromising strength. It may not be as modular as an AR-15, but it's incredibly durable. The whole gun feels like a product of another era. Part World War II battle rifle, part modern semi-auto, and part utility tool designed for real-world field use. That combination is why the Mini-14 just keeps ticking, decade after decade. But the story gets even more interesting when you look at the versions Ruger never really advertised. One of the rarest variants ever produced is the Mini-14 chambered in 22 Remington. Most shooters in the US have never seen one. Ruger created this model specifically for export to countries where civilians couldn't own rifles in military calibers like .223 or 5.56 NATO. Functionally, it was the same rifle, same bolt, same gas system, same feel, but legally different enough to slip through restrictive laws. Ruger didn't talk about these rifles, rarely included them in catalogs, and never reported production numbers. To this day, they're a quiet mystery in the Mini-14 lineage. A symbol of how far Ruger was willing to go to reach global markets while keeping details discreet. Then there's the Mini-30, a rifle that could have become a legend if Ruger had supported it properly. In 1987, when cheap 7.62 39 ammo and imported AKs were flooding the American market, Ruger adapted the Mini platform to fire the Soviet cartridge. On paper, it was brilliant. The reliability of the Mini combined with a soft recoiling, affordable 30 caliber round that excelled at hog hunting and brush shooting. In practice, the Mini-30 suffered from under-support. Magazine availability was sparse and expensive. Early firing pin profiles weren't optimized for hard military primers, leading to frequent light strikes with steel case ammo. Ruger did eventually improve these issues, but by then, the Mini-30's reputation had already taken damage. It became the rifle that could have been great, but Ruger never pushed it far enough. However, the most overlooked part of the Mini-14 story is its secret career in uniform. The rifle is remembered today as a ranch gun or a truck gun, but it quietly saw service in law enforcement and even international military units. In the 1980s, many sheriff's departments across the U.S. issued Mini-14 GB models, GB standing for government barrel. These rifles featured flash hiders, bayonet lugs, and sling swivels meant for professional use. They were sturdy, approachable, and significantly less politically threatening than AR-15s at the time. The Royal Bermuda Regiment carried Mini-14s for over 30 years. French prison units used them. Peruvian police deployed them. Even some U.S. federal agencies used Mini-14s for site security during the Cold War. Ruger never promoted these contracts because they wanted the Mini-14 to maintain its civilian-friendly image. But the rifle absolutely saw real duty in the field, and it performed well enough to stay there for decades. And of course, there was the AC-556, the select fire version of the Mini-14 featuring burst and full auto capability. Though never widely adopted, it did serve in niche military and SWAT roles. Today, the AC-556 is a rare and expensive collector's item on the NFA market, a ghost of an era Ruger doesn't discuss often. But this is where the tone shifts, because the Mini-14's legacy is not purely about utility and innovation. It has also appeared in several tragic and high-profile incidents, something Ruger understandably avoids discussing. In the 1986 FBI Miami shootout, the suspects armed with a Mini-14 inflicted heavy casualties and triggered a seismic shift in law enforcement weapon policy. The Mini-14 proved its devastating effectiveness in the wrong hands. In 1989, the Montreal massacre saw a legally purchased Mini-14 used to murder 14 women. In 2011, the Norway Utoya massacre involved a Mini-14 alongside a handgun. In 2020, during the Nova Scotia rampage, the shooter also used a Mini-14 among other firearms. These events cast a dark shadow over the rifle's history. Ruger never publicly analyzes or revisits them, and it's easy to understand why. But they remain part of the Mini-14 story, evidence of how a rifle intended as a civilian-friendly carbine can still become a tool of destruction. Despite all of this, Ruger continued refining the Mini-14, quietly improving accuracy, its most persistent criticism. Early rifles simply weren't made for tight groups. Thin barrels would warp when heated, and the gas system slammed the bolt hard enough to disrupt stability. A 3 or 4 MOA rifle was considered normal. That changed in the early 2000s. Ruger didn't announce a redesign, but attentive shooters noticed the differences. Heavier barrels, smaller gas ports, tighter receiver machining, and improved harmonics. By the time the 580 series rifles appeared in 2007, the Mini-14 was capable of sub-2 MOA accuracy with good ammunition. It still wasn't a precision rifle, but it was far better than its reputation suggested. Ruger let the improvement speak for itself, never overhyping the upgrade. Today, newer Mini-14 rifles are significantly more accurate than their predecessors, even though many shooters still repeat the outdated Mini-14 can't hit anything narrative. So that leads to one final question. Why is the Mini-14 still alive in 2025? Why does it continue selling in a world dominated by modular AR-15s that are cheaper, lighter, more accurate, and infinitely customizable? The answer is simple, but powerful. The Mini-14 doesn't look like a threat. It doesn't resemble a military rifle. It doesn't alarm neighbors, game wardens, or politically sensitive environments. It flies under the radar. In places with strict gun culture expectations, a Mini-14 is seen as a tool, not a weapon. That matters more than most people realize. It also fills a role AR-15s don't. Mini-14 owners are often ranchers, rural homeowners, older shooters, or people who simply want a reliable rifle that doesn't invite endless modification. A Mini-14 doesn't tempt you to build, rebuild, and accessorize it like an AR. It just works. It eats cheap ammo, shrugs off dirt, and handles weather without complaint. It feels like a rifle, not a platform, something complete straight from the box. And that's the heart of the Mini-14's staying power. It is a rifle with character, flaws, improvements, controversies, and loyal fans. It is simple, yet mechanically fascinating, outdated, yet surprisingly modern, underestimated, yet enduring. The Mini-14 survives because it still has a purpose, a community, and a story no other rifle can replicate. So what do you think? Is the Mini-14 a relic, a misunderstood legend, or a rifle ready for another generation of shooters? Let us know in the comments. And if you want a full comparison between the Mini-14 and the AR-15, or a deep dive into the 580 series accuracy improvements, hit subscribe. Firepower has more coming your way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.